Good morning, everyone. Well, it's a little later than when I made my other video. This one will post tomorrow. I forgot about Hanukkah and I wanted to go ahead and just say a little bit about it. It is not a Jewish required festival or holiday, so it could incorporate the rapture if you want to count that. Of course, it can happen. The rapture can happen anytime. I'm seated at an angle because the sun behind me would be too hard to look at if I didn't do it this way. So that's why I'm also shaded. Anyhow, we're going to continue talking about our Christmas story. In the New Testament, there are two genealogies. So-and-so begot so-and-so begot so-and-so. If you look at Mary's, it starts with Abraham, and it moves forward, of course, to her and Joseph. Now, why two genealogies? Well, in Matthew, we're reading Mary's genealogy, and hers does tie back to Abraham, just like we're fine with Joseph. The difference being is the class of people in Mary's would not meet muster. We're going to I'll cover that a little bit. I got a little bit of a commentary to read, and we'll kind of look at that. In Luke, you have the other genealogy. It's not in the beginning. It starts in verse 3, and it goes from Mary and Joseph all the way back to Adam. So there's a difference in who's involved, and it's a cleaner set of people, if you will. Now, why was it important to have Joseph's side listed as well? It's also listed by Luke, who was the only non-Jew in the group. But he was a physician, so he treated everybody. This was a patriarchal society. Everything went from male to male to male, firstborn male to male to male. The women's side didn't count. They weren't lesser citizens. It's just that it kept track on the male side. So Mary's has the proper lineage. She's the true mother. Joseph is the stepfather. God is the father. So his side, coming from God, had to go through the right lineage all the way back and be clean. Technically, but God was again the father. So in reality it didn't matter, but they had their laws, their rules to follow. So John had to comply with those. Not John, Joseph had to comply with those. I don't know how God did it. It doesn't matter. We know that the angels came to both of them to explain to them what was going on, because they would not have done it any other way. They would have basically walked away. Mary would have been thrown out if it weren't for the angels explaining what was going on. This was not acceptable. They stoned young women for getting pregnant back then. Their rules were a lot harsher than today's. Today's, it seems like it's commonplace in high school carrying a diaper bag. Okay, let me take a look here. I'm in this river seat, which means I don't have my laptop. I have the Bible. I have the Bible in both. So what we're going to look at is this commentary here regarding the genealogy in Matthew. Many families have that one person they don't talk about much. Somewhere along the line, some relative embarrassed everyone else or developed a shady reputation. Well, Jesus surely understood that, because his own genealogy includes 4 women of questionable character. We see repeatedly God accepts everybody, every class of person, every sin level. It doesn't matter. He accepts everybody. And we even see it in his genealogy, but this is not the one that counts. So it doesn't matter from their legal point of view. The first was Tamar, Matthew 1:3, who got pregnant with twins by her father-in-law. You can find that in Genesis 38. The second woman was Rahab, whose occupation was listed as harlot in Joshua 2:1. The third woman was Ruth, a foreigner who moved to Israel with her mother-in-law, and you can find that in Ruth 1:16 and 17. And the fourth was Bathsheba, the mistress of King David. Matthew refers to her only as her who had been the wife of Uriah. So it's strange to kind of see these type of people in the lineage of Jesus, but it doesn't matter to God. Jesus wipes everything clean. Everybody is accepted. I'm not going to read the genealogies because it's about as much fun as reading the phone book. But again, I just read Matthew 1:1 and 2. The book of genealogy of Jesus Christ, the son of David, the son of Abraham. Abraham begot Isaac, Isaac begot Jacob, Jacob begot Judah and his brothers. So that's how it starts off. If you look at the Luke version, it's a little bit different and it goes the other direction. Modern backwards. This one goes forward. It's still the same information. It's still telling us who begot who. But this is for the legal types that had to argue whether Jesus was eligible or not to be what he was. He didn't start his ministry till 30. Why? Because you could not be a priest until you were 30. So he's king and priest. And that's who we worship, who we work for, who forgave us our sins when he accepted them unto himself. The early stories of the Christ's birth, you should be familiar with all Christians. The angels coming ahead of time, telling about it. The herders on the mountainsides with their sheep that they were watching. This wouldn't have been winter. They'd be bundled up. They'd be inside a cave or someplace bundled up. Maybe a place that later on might have a child born in it. These were the shepherds for the priestly sheep, the sheep that would be offered in the temple. And that's where Jesus was born, where he's going to be offered. The parallels are fun to read. I'm going to skip over a little bit. We're going to go over to chapter 2. Now, after Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea, in the days of Herod the king, behold, wise men from the east came to Jerusalem. Okay, I used the proper term there because I was reading from the Bible. But Jesus invited wise guys. And I don't, and there's three of them, so, you can picture the three stooges all dressed up in garb riding on camels. God has a sense of humor. He doesn't mind this. We're not being sacrilegious. I'm not being anyway. But why do they come from the east? What's in the east? Remember what happened when Israel was conquered by Babylon? They carted everybody to Babylon, which is essentially Iran and Iraq, depending on where they were taken. That's to the east, isn't it? And when they were released to return to Israel, most, unfortunately, most did not return. 70 years is a long time. That's a generation. But some that were really followers of Jesus or followers of God, they did return, and they helped to restore the temple. It wasn't wiped out like the modern one, but it was damaged in the fighting. So they went and restored it and got things back together. Those that stayed behind knew the teachings. There are things that you can see in the heavens. See, that's one of the things that a lot of us don't have really a good feel on, is that they didn't have big street lights back then and things that glare that would keep you from seeing the stars. They didn't have high rises. And this was a pretty barren climate area for the most part. So they could see the sky. Every one of them there knew the sky. These were not astrologers, but astronomy. People interested in the stars and what they did and how they moved. We've seen enough. I mean, we've seen the Revelation 12 sign, or at least a version of it that may or may not be true depending on which school of thought you follow, but that's basically was spotted by us, and that would have been spotted by them back then. Whatever the star they followed, it might have been an asteroid. You know, there's things that people have speculated that it is. The bottom line is it traveled in a direction that took them to Jerusalem. And they knew because it goes through the right constellations, and they had the constellations back then. Again, not astrologers, astronomers. Where's the bee buzzing? God provided a path to knowledgeable people. And they came bearing gifts because that told them there was a king going to be born. Well, Herod, he was a pseudo-king. He wasn't a very good one. He got what he wanted, but he didn't give the people what they wanted enough. He didn't refurbish the temple for the people. He did it as a gesture so that his legacy would continue on. Motivation. In any case, they came bearing gifts. Gold, it's equivalent of money, tradable to anybody. Frankincense and myrrh. These are things that you would use to embalm somebody. There was a fragrance involved, and it can be almost a tarry-like substance in its right form. Myrrh. Myrrh comes from Smyrna in Turkey now. One of the areas that you're familiar with in the Bible. They brought useful things, so they didn't have to work a lot. They obviously did, but they didn't have to worry about being forced to work. The biggest thing they had on their schedule was teaching Jesus. And he was able to go into the synagogue and debate with the elders in there and amaze them by how much he knew. So he spent a lot of time studying. He was a baby. He grew up. He didn't have the Bible on a chip inside of his brain. He had to put it there. Now, he had help. But the whole history of Christ being born, the location for his birth, everything was foretold in the Old Testament. The elders should have known better. They should have questioned him more. But he liked pushing their buttons. He knew that they were shallow, not what they appeared to be. They weren't knowledgeable. Not the way they should be, anyway. Oh, I was reading about the wise guys. I guess I should go back to that. I forgot where I was at. Okay, so after he was born in Bethlehem of Judea in the days of Herod the king, behold, wise men from the east came to Jerusalem, saying, Where is he who has been born King of the Jews? For we have seen his star in the east, and we have come to worship him. Well, Herod didn't really know anything about this. Again, it was a false leader. He was a power person, and that's all he wanted. He did enough to make sure that the people were happy, but no more than he had to, because he had to keep the Romans happy. A figurative leader, not a good one. When Herod the king heard this, he was troubled, and all Jerusalem with him. Why would they be troubled? They wanted a king. They thought they had a good king already. They didn't know, so they weren't being taught correctly. It doesn't matter what generation you're from. If you're not being taught correctly, you're going to jump to the wrong conclusions. We're seeing a lot of that today. And when he had gathered all the chief priests and scribes of the people together, he inquired of them where the Christ was to be born. So he understood who it was going to be. And he was afraid he was going to meet the Lion of Judah, not the Lamb. Everybody, the people themselves, knew that Christ was coming. And Christ is just the Greek version of Messiah. Messiah is Hebrew, Greek. Take your pick which language you want to be in. My legal name is Lawrence, but I go by Larry. It's just the way things are sometimes. So they said to him, In Bethlehem of Judea, for thus it is written by the prophet, and I've already covered this in my last main video, but you, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are not the least among the rulers of Judah. For out of you shall come a ruler who will be a shepherd for my people Israel. And again, that's in Isaiah 7. They had all the information that they needed, and yet they ignored it. These people were arrogant beyond belief, so used to power and leadership that they became corrupted. When Jesus raised from the dead Lazarus, they got together and plotted how to kill Lazarus again. God is raising somebody from the dead, and you're going to go kill him again so that you can stay in control. What kind of a mindset is that? Well, it's a corrupted, foolish one, and we're seeing it live out today again. One thing you learn from history is that we don't learn from history. And Herod, when he had secretly called the wise men, determined from them what time the star appeared, and he sent them to Bethlehem and said, Go and search carefully for the young child, because he had to be a couple of years old now by this point. And when you have found him, bring back word to me that I may come and worship him also. Now, that's an outright lie. You wanted to kill him. But he started off the conversation with a lie. And when they heard the king, they departed, and behold, the star which they had seen in the east went before them, till it came and stood over the young child. When they saw the star, they rejoiced with exceeding great joy. And when they had come into the house, they saw a young child with Mary, his mother. Does this kind of blow your nativity scene out of the water here a little bit? I'm sorry if it does. It's not a baby in a manger. If they want to have a manger, you want to have a nativity scene with him in the manger in the crib, you got to have the shepherds there, but don't bring in the wise guys. They didn't come till later. It's not that far from Iran, Iraq to Israel, but it took them a year or two to get there. And when they come in the house, they saw the mother. Come into the house, they saw the young child with the mother, and fell down and worshipped him. And when they had opened their treasures, they presented him gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And there's a meme going around where they replace frankincense with Frankenstein. Well, I didn't understand. Then being divinely warned in a dream that they should not return to Herod, they departed for their own country another way. And of course, God knows what's going on, what's happening, and he instructs the family to go to Egypt for a while. And he'll tell them when they can come back. You see, they had the means. They were given gold. They couldn't just pack up and move to another country and then come back without some means to do so. God will provide. Whenever you have a need, God will provide. And it may come from some place that you don't even think of. You can't sit there and go, gee, where can I find the money to do this? Just trust God. You can even take the first step without the money in your hand. Now, I'm not telling anybody to do anything without being clear with God who's in charge and what your needs are. But if you're strong enough, confident enough in God, he can do miracles for you if you have the faith to let him do it. Now, when we celebrate the birth of Christ, we're, of course, celebrating a plan that had been in place for thousands of years. And it wasn't implemented until the right time. The things that are coming now, the bad things that are going to hit the earth, Book of Revelation, that was also planned at the same time. And it's going to happen in its appropriate time. Now we are told, the general things that will be happening around. And we can see them happening. But we don't know. So we have to just go about our day knowing that the smile you put on your face is how you will help people. Your demeanor is how you will help people. You have to be joyous and happy when you're helping people. You can't be in there just grumbling around and, oh, I guess I have to help you. You better be happy about things. It doesn't matter your situation. Situations have nothing to do with happiness and joy. It has to do with God. So if you're not happy, pull the plug out, blow it off, and stick it back in. Reboot your connection to God. Rededicate yourself. Refocus yourself. God will provide. He's got many great names, from Emmanuel, Jesus, Yeshua, Joshua. There is no J in the Hebrew alphabet. You have to kind of have it in the Greek. And his full name would have been Yeshua Bar Yosef. So it's important that the Father has a good name, because it's included in yours. That's essentially what we do when we give our last name in America. We're tying ourselves into our Father's lineage. Mine's gone and I miss him, but hopefully we'll see each other soon. Wish I could say when, but I don't know, and nobody does. Our predictors have kind of gone silent because all their appropriate days that they were picking turned out to be incorrect, at least for this year. They might be okay next year. We can't be very far away. We cannot be, not from looking at the things happening. All the things of Revelation are falling into place. Pretty much everything that was predicted is happening. But is it happening at the level that it needs to be? Apparently not. price of meat is, they want us eating anything but healthy. They want to basically starve everybody out. They want to kill everybody. I've said this before. They want the population reduced by 80%, and they don't care how it happens. These are heartless people. So that's why you have to be prepared, because we don't know when we're getting out of here. And you say, I haven't got the funds to do it. If you buy 1 can of soup extra a month, that will be 1 can more that you will have to eat from. Because when they eventually run out, and everything's going to run out, we have a major election next year that would take control back from these people. And they aren't going to do that happily or willingly. So we have, perhaps next year would be the final year. It doesn't match our calculations. It would be a miracle for people to figure out the exact day for anything nowadays, as much as the calendar has been misappropriated, shuffled around, miscalculated. We have general times, but we could easily be a year off one way or the other. The original calculation for the time of Christ could be as much as 7 years off. In the price of things, that's not very much. But if you're sitting, watching the pot try to boil, it may take a long time. That's why you're better off to just keep busy. Do all the things to be prepared, and then don't worry about it. Just keep busy, and it will go by very fast. I'm watching some birds flutter in the trees over there. See, there's lots of things for me to be distracted. There's a woodpecker over there, I can hear him. More birds down there making noise. This is a quiet park. Now that's going to change this weekend. I'm the only one in the campsite right now, but there's 5 people supposedly coming in tomorrow. We'll see how they like the rain, if they're true campers or not. But the temperature is going to change from 27 last night to 60 for a low. I'm thinking that much of a temperature change might have some severe weather with it. We'll have to see. And I had 2 field mice come into my tent yesterday while I was in town. They got in and got into 4 or 5 pieces of bread that was left in my loaf and made a mess with that. That's not the bad part. The bad part is they poked holes in my tent to go in and out. So I think there was at least 2 of them. And they got a hole in the side where they exited. So I've got the duct tape in place. I've adjusted the tarp to cover the hole, so I'm okay for the rain. I have to do a more permanent fix as soon as I find my patch kit. You just deal with things. Keeps life interesting. I didn't bring my dry goods cooler. Everything should be locked up when you're camping. And I didn't bring it because I've never had problems with the rats before. So I guess I should go back and get my dry goods cooler so they can't get into it. I mean, they might still come in, but they're not going to find anything, so they won't come back. They've found something, so they might come back. I've rearranged stuff and put things up, so threw some things out. We'll see what happens. Don't let life get to you. You don't have any control over it anyway. There's nothing in your life, not a thing in your life that you can control. Well, one thing. You can refuse God. He won't go past that. But other than that, there's nothing you have control over. You can't say today I'm going to do this and tomorrow I'm going to do that, unless you put in front of it, if the Lord wills, then I'll do this and then I'll do that. That's the only way you can get some guarantee. So just go with the flow, be happy. Like the song, be happy. All right. You have a blessed day. See you in the next video. Well, for those of you who have watched my videos in the past, you will recognize this spot. The only thing that's different, I think, at this time is that I'm here in the winter. I wasn't here last winter. I've been here before, but with the leaves gone, you can see a lot more. It's a farm up on the hill. On the other side, no house there. Water's pretty calm. There hasn't been any storms. That's going to change this weekend. This is the public area. If you got a boat, you can put it in here. Not too many people do. There's really not a whole lot to see once you get out of the park. Seeing some fishing lure and tackle caught up in the trees. Pretty much that's everywhere. All right. That will be my view as I'm recording, but I'm seated in a swing that faces this way, so I can't turn it around. It's bolted into the ground. Blessings, everyone.